Okay, now I move on to GT, the Gujarat Titans, for a review for the 2025 IPL season. Now, the first 2 years, Gujarat finished first in the pool play. So at the end of the pool play, they were first and they went on to win their first year. In 2022, 2023, they finished first and went on to finish runner-up. And last year, they dropped down to 8th place. So the first 2 years, they obviously had Hardik Pandya in charge. Last year was Shubman Gill's first year. So an outstanding start for a franchise, a new franchise, to have such good performances, already win a trophy within their first 3 years. But they've made some big shifts in terms of their squad. So as I said, finished 8th here. So what I want us to look at is, first of all, the retention phase. So we look at, obviously, they retained Shubman Gill, their captain, Sudarshan, the really high-achieving, sort of underrated player, and I'll talk about him in more detail in a moment. Shah Rukh Khan, that power player through the middle that every side is looking for from a domestic point of view. They've doubled up with that, so they've got a left and a right-hander with Rahul Tewatia, a real finisher. Won a number of games for Gujarat Titans from nowhere. Can offer the odd over or two, but they've retained him. And the fact they were able to retain both Shah Rukh Khan and Rahul Tewatia for both 4 crore each provided quite a lot of budget heading into the auction. And they retained the master Rashid Khan, who is a 4-over lock-in every time. And from a batting point of view, can create a bit of power at the back end. Quite an unorthodox player, but scores some valuable runs for GT as well. So at the end of that retention, they still had quite a lot of money in the bank, and going to the auction, they had a number of players to fill, but they obviously had a pretty clear plan in mind. So let's just go through what I think will be their batting 11. And there could be a bit of a change. I'll talk about that in a moment in terms of the exact balance they might go with, because they're in a little bit of a predicament whether they go batting heavy or bowling heavy. So firstly, let's just go through their side. Shubman Gill, outstanding player, a future Indian captain in time. Whether he's the next in line or not, only time will tell. They spent a lot of money to get Jos Butler. And Jos Butler has scored a lot of runs at Ahmedabad. And I think that would have been something they would have considered. Not only the fact he's a multi-skilled player, he can keep wickets. Obviously, he's a banker from a runs perspective at the top. Scores at a high rate from a strike rate point of view. But as I said, he scored a huge amount of runs at Ahmedabad, including finals. So they would have certainly thought about that. We talk about Sudarshan. Now, he very much slides under the radar. He scored over 1,000 IPL runs, close to average of 50. So he's averaged just under 48 at a strike rate of 139. And he's batted up and down the order. He's batted as low as 4, as high as opening. And I think 3 is a nice slot for him. I know he opened at times with Shubman last year and they provided a good platform, but I think the power of Jos and the technique of Shubman, I think, is a great opening combination, albeit 2 right-handers. Then you've got the likes of Sudarshan just slotting in underneath that. Now, the next decision is an interesting one. I've gone for Glenn Phillips. He's in tremendous form on the international scene at the moment. For New Zealand, he often bats at 4. What you need in this role is some substance from a batting point of view. I sort of tossed up whether it be Shafane Rutherford or Glenn Phillips. I've gone with Phillips just because of the high volume of runs that he scored in T20 internationals. I think if you don't play him at the start, then you're missing a trick. So, and Shafane is another power player, and that sort of suits these guys here, Shah Rukh Khan, Tewatia. You could add another power player, but then I think you lack substance in terms of that volume to sort of finish out that top 4. Washington Sundar, look, he's going to play. You know, they spent a reasonable amount of money on him, between 3 and 4 crore. But I think, he's been shuffled around. He's gone RCB. He was bought for big money at SRH and then didn't really play a lot. Hopefully he's found a home here at GT. He's not you wouldn't describe Washington as a power player. He's more a touch player. You know, he finds gaps, he manoeuvres the ball, he can hit over the offside. That's pretty much when he's at his best. So they've got to find a slot from it. I've put him in here at 5 because it's sort of a conduit, I guess, between the power players or these top 4 and then your power players below. So they need somebody who can manoeuvre the ball around, keep the game ticking along. So I think Washington will bat somewhere around about 5. Shah Rukh Khan, as I said, the power player. Tavatia, he might bowl an over or two, but predominantly he's there as a finisher. Then you go down to Rashid Khan. As I said, 8 is probably a slot too high for him, I think. But I think GT have to decide, as I said, whether they're going to go batting heavy or bowling heavy. And I'll talk about how they might structure that in a moment. But absolute legend, Rashid Khan. His 4 overs between overs 7 and 17 are an absolute lock-in. And he sort of controls that phase for GT. Kagiso Rabada, the beauty of Kagiso is that he doesn't have to open the bowling. He's as effective coming in first change and bowling 1 sort of between overs 4 and 6, and then 1 or 2 through the middle, and then 1 at the back end. So he provides some real, some real flexibility there in their lineup. Prasidh Krishna, the big tall right armour from Karnataka, obviously went to RR, had a breakout season, got picked for India, and then has been injured for a large period of the last 2 years. So he'll be frustrated, but he'll be excited to get back into the IPL. Once again, a tall bowler, gets good bounce, a good new ball option because he just shapes the ball away from the right-handers, and he is a wicket taker in the power play. Then we've got Mohammad Siraj. And Mohammad Siraj will enjoy bowling at Ahmedabad as opposed to RCB at Chinnaswamy. He'll enjoy that extra bounce. He'll enjoy that little bit of seam movement and a bigger ground, a bigger surface area. So looking forward to seeing how Mohammad Siraj goes. I think he's a high quality bowler. India, he's very much on the Indian circuit across all 3 formats. So looking forward to seeing how his change is. And then I look at the balance, and I think that, I've gone that as a batting 11, but it could change in terms of if they were to lose wickets and they needed that extra batting. Mahipal Lomror is in fine form at the moment for Rajasthan and the domestic circuit. He scored a lot of runs, a very good power player in terms of against spin, and had a bit of a breakout season at times for RCB over the last couple of years. So he was in high demand at the auction, and rightfully so, because I think he's an improving player. The only problem with bringing Mahipal Lomror in here if GT were to lose wickets is he can't actually replace anyone in the top 5 other than Sai Sudarshan. So he can't replace the captain, he can't replace the wicketkeeper, he can't replace Glenn Phillips, who's probably the best fielder in the world and bowls off spin, and obviously Washi's your frontline off spinner as well. So the only issue with Mahipal is that, or anyone who might come as a batting replacement, is they can only do it after Sai Sudarshan has been dismissed. So that's a little bit of an issue in terms of how that balance might work. Sai Kishore is the other way they could go, because they could go with one of these 3 seamers as the impact, bring up Sai Kishore, who obviously is a better batsman than these 2, and he provides that left arm spin option. The only issue, once again, going back, is that GT don't really have a seam bowling all-rounder in that lineup. So the balance is a little bit fuddled in terms of how they might go about it and how they might be able to maximise that impact rule. So I'll just go through their replacements, because they've done well, I think, from a replacement point of view in some areas more than others. So obviously Jos Butler, they've got 3 keepers. Anuj Rawat, who's come from RCB, for a Delhi player who's very much on the rise. I think he would be a straight swap from a keeping point of view. And then GT would bring in another overseas batter through the middle, probably Shafane Rutherford. Kumar Kshagra, he was bought for 55 lakhs. So there's obviously some interest from other sides. The previous auction, he was bought for a huge amount. So there's clearly some real promise with Kumar Kshagra. However, you look at his domestic record, it doesn't really suggest that. Averages less than 15 in domestic T20 cricket. Strike rate of 125. I mean, that's not exactly explosive or high volume. So I'm unsure, what are the skills they've seen in Kumar Kshagra that has led to that, I guess, the demand for him. So obviously scouts have watched him, they've seen something. He just hasn't quite been able to transfer that into his domestic form yet. So maybe he's a long-term prospect, the start of a 3-year plan. Hopefully, maybe they think in a year or 2 he could be something very special. Sai Sudarshan, the only real top order cover, other than Anuj Rawat, is Nishant Sidhu, who really normally bats 4 or 5. So there is a real dearth of top order cover in this squad if they were to get an injury. I've talked about Shubman, a high quality player, pretty much known as a finisher, more suited to sort of 5 or 6. Real power player, hits sixes over the offside, can hit spin anywhere. You know, he's very much a developing player and become an integral part of that West Indies T20 lineup. So whether he starts or whether he has to start as a reserve, you know, that'll be a decision for Ashish Nehra to make. Washington Sundar, they've got a straight swap from a bowling perspective with Jayant Yadav, but certainly not from a batting point of view. And if Washington was to get injured, they felt they needed an off spinner. I think firstly they would stick with Phillips because they wouldn't need to change their structure. If they wanted Jayant because they'd gone with Shubman Rutherford, then I think they're going to have to bring another batsman into this lineup because everyone sliding up one is just a spot too high. I've talked about Mahipal. He's pretty much a straight swap also for Shah Rukh Khan if he can't fit in that initial lineup. But I think they will try and find a spot within the 12 for Mahipal, who's playing really nicely at the moment. Kagiso Rabada, Gerald Coetzee, the South African, is pretty much a straight swap. Does not have to bowl with a new ball either, but can bowl in all 3 phases. Is a wicket taker, the same as Kagiso Rabada. Doesn't have the strength or quality at the death that Kagiso has, but he is pretty much a straight swap, offers a little bit more with the bat. And Karim Janat is that sort of all-rounder, a bit of power with the bat, quite unorthodox, more of a medium pace change-up type of bowler, so maybe getting on slower surfaces, he could well come into the equation. Prasidh Krishna, I think they've done well from a straight swap perspective. Ishant Sharma, very much a new ball bowler, does take wickets in the power play, tall, swings the ball in, highly skilled bowler and a nice backup for Ashish Nehra to have on the books. Gurno Bra, right arm quick, he's got genuine pace, plays for Punjab and he bats okay as well. So that's another backup player, whether they want a little bit more depth of batting, something to consider. Mohammad Siraj, you've got 2 left arm replacements there, and I think with Ashish Nehra, I think they were always going to have some left arm quicks in that squad, and I think they need it. I think they need some variation among their quicks, which I'll talk about in a bit more detail in a moment. So Arshad Khan, very much an all-rounder, has played for MI, averages around about 25 domestically in T20 cricket with the bat. Left arm, can take the new ball, can swing it, but he's sort of a bits and pieces cricketer at the moment, not really good enough at one, but certainly provides some depth if they want someone who can offer a bit of both. Kulwant Kadrolia swings the new ball, loves a bouncer, loves bowling lots of bouncers, an aggressive left arm quick, nice change up, so he sort of slots in there. Good friends with Mohammad Siraj, and they sort of hang out a bit together. He's a nice bowler as a backup, certainly won't be a frontliner, however. And then from Sai Kishore, a left arm spin perspective, they've got Manav Sutar from Rajasthan as well. So, they've got some areas covered well. I would say, as I said, there's a problem with the impact sub in terms of how they can shape that side, because if they go for Sai Kishore in here, they leave themselves with only 2 seamers. So I don't think they can do that. If they want to bring in an extra batsman, if they're in trouble and they want some substance through the middle, as I said, they're limited in terms of how they can do it, because they can only do it when Sai Sudarshan gets out. He's the only person they can replace. So there's definitely some thinking they're going to have to do if they bat first in terms of how they would structure that side. I think they'd leave Sai out at the moment because they've already got plenty of off-spin options and a leggy. They just don't have a left armour in that side. So when they get to certain grounds, they might reshape it. I think middle order certainly has power, I guess, with Shahrukh and Tavatia. They don't have a huge amount of substance or experience from a high volume point of view, though. That's why I've gone from Glenn Phillips, because he does score hundreds at number 4. But outside of that, there's not, Washington is a bit unproven in T20 cricket. Certainly as someone who can bat in the middle there, I think he's a very good player, and hopefully this will be the season where he shows that he can do that role through the middle, but it's still unproven. And I think if you look at these three seamers here, they're very much the same. You know, they're all tall, they all get good bounce, they all present the seam, they all swing the ball the same way. So they're all kind of similar. And in terms of change-ups, you know, they pretty much all just bowl the same off-cutter. There's no real knuckleballs or, you know, back of the hand or slot change-ups, which I think, you know, it'll be really interesting to see whether Ashish Nehra looks and goes, hey, I actually need to get a left arm quick in that just to give it a little bit of variation. I think if you get on a surface where the ball seams, that is a great three seamers. If you get on a flat one and you need some variation, I think they will need to change that line up to get a little bit more variation into it. And I think probably a real positive is that is an excellent top three. You know, that has everything. That has power, that has technique, that has high volume from three players. So I think GT can rely on those three to set the platform for the majority of games. And then you've got the power at the back end. We just need these sort of 4 and 5 to stand up, and then you've got a very good top 7. So all in all, I think GT have got themselves together a nice squad. As I said, Jos Butler, I think, is a massive addition. Glenn Phillips, that real enthusiasm through the middle. Overseas, you can bank on Rashid Khan. Exciting domestic quicks, all tall. Other than Ishant, they pretty much all swing the ball away. So there's lacking a little bit of variation there, but I think it's a good squad, especially in their home conditions in Ahmedabad. So last year they finished 8th. I don't see them as a top 4 contender at this stage. Certainly don't have the variety that some other squads have or the depth that some other squads have. So I have them sitting in at 7th place. So GT, I'm not so sure you will add to the trophy cabinet this year, but you will certainly win some games at home, and with that quality, you'll certainly upset some sides that are getting close to the playoff contention.